Hey, this is Madalyn Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio. So let's dive right in. And I am going to start with what has really been the topic of the week in social audio. There's definitely been a real sense of shift in the social audio space in the last week. And I felt that almost from the moment I closed the mic on All Things Audio last week. When I woke up last Thursday, I woke up to quite a few different tags on a certain article and quite a few DMs as well around it. The Bloomberg article, I'm just going to refer to it in that way. This Bloomberg article by Kurt Wagner and Edward Ludlow basically it says that there's a potential issue with spaces being kind of pushed further down the roadmap than we might like. So this article came out, as I say, last week. It's all a big furore around what is happening with Twitter in its entirety. What's Elon Musk going to bring to it? Is he going to join us? Is he going to add things, take things away? He certainly, even just the thought of him joining in with Twitter is causing a kind of shake-up. There certainly seems to be some comings and some goings. The article itself is actually behind a paywall on Bloomberg, and I'm really reluctant to chat around ones that are behind paywall because obviously I want everybody to be able to go away and read and look at, the articles that we talk about. But the lines in this obviously hit home with quite a few people. So I think, we will refer to it today. So I'll read the first couple of paragraphs here. So Twitter Inc. employees are enduring the whiplash of public commentary from the social network's future owner, a changeover in leadership and a hiring freeze. On top of all that, some will be assigned new jobs as the company shifts away from its riskier projects. Executives told workers of plans to pull back resources for some long-term ambitions, including audio spaces, newsletters, and communities, in favour of focusing on more immediate needs. So that was the line that has caused a lot of conversation right here on Twitter. Madalyn, I come to you. What do you think?
Very concerning. Elon Musk, even though it is not a done deal, he is having so much influence over Twitter right now. And they're making all these changes. I mean, they've let some big executives go right away when all of this was first coming about with the prospect of him buying the company. And it was very concerning that, okay, big changes are coming. Spaces does so well. I did not think that they were going to pull back resources into it. And it really worries me because Spaces is so popular. What an amazing way for us to bring people together through voice. But they want to put their resources in places to boost the platform, get more. He's made a big deal about how he wants way more users on Twitter, way more profiles. He wants the numbers to jump, and he wants better monetization for the company. The company relies mostly on advertising. That's where most of the revenue comes from. He wants to change all that. So on one hand, I'm not that surprised. He has a totally different vision than where Twitter's currently at. Is it the right way or the wrong way? We don't know. But, on the other hand, it's like, why mess with things that are working so well? In this article, they mention, in addition to spaces, newsletters and communities. Some of these other items are newer. They're not as widely embraced. I mean, how many people are really using the newsletter feature? It is a small percent. And the communities feature is still so new. That's another small percent. I can see pulling back some resources for things like that. But Spaces, I feel like, has brought more life back into Twitter in the past well over a year, about a year and a half now. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do think so. And I think my first reaction really was that it was kind of sad for those of us that have invested time and effort in putting together Spaces, thinking of the content for them. And it did dig that kind of, you'll know this absolutely inside out, Madalyn, but it poked at that digital marketing training of mine, which says don't put your eggs all on one platform and all into one thing. And it kind of spoke to that idea that, we can't rely on these platforms. We can't rely on the features on these platforms. People that have been making the content and speaking out regularly, things like we're doing here, I feel like it would be really sad not to catch up with everybody in this space, many of whom the faces, I look forward to seeing in the space every single week. And it kind of made me think, oh my goodness, what brings us together is this space. And I know I could catch up with people, I could DM them directly. There's not so many, numbers in this space every week that we couldn't still come together in some way, but not like this. This is different and this is special. So yeah, it kind of made me feel sad for that and made me think, oh my goodness, those connections that you make, if you really do want to build relationships with those people, you have to work beyond what you're doing. I guess it was a bit of a reminder of that. And then I think the first thing that really kind of shook me in terms of, oh, this is really happening, was when I was listening to Jocelyn Main's Bugging Out space on Friday, and Quinn, who's his co-host on there from Twitter, announced that she's leaving the Spaces team. She's going to work in the Home Timeline team. And she just kind of mentioned it as, oh, it's part of the reorganisation that's happening and people are moving around, priorities have changed. It was something she volunteered herself for, moving from one place to another. But, Quinn and Jocelyn, I've been listening to their Bugging Out space, regularly, generally on the replay, but I've still been part of that. I felt part of that community for quite some time. And, it is the place to go. If you've got a bug in Spaces, you can go there and request the mic and chat it through. And Jocelyn's there with all of his receipts and knowing what's going on. And Quinn's generally, she's in the know about what's going on their side. So that kind of made me think, oh my goodness, this is a real thing and it's really happening and it's sad.
It is sad. And I just put in the nest the replay from Bugging Out with Quinn and Jocelyn, where she makes the announcement. I couldn't listen to it live, but I listened to the replay. And it's so sad that they're shifting resources in such a, she's going to work on the Home Timeline. So apparently right now with Elon Musk, they feel like that is more important than Twitter Spaces. But let's be very clear. Twitter Spaces is not going away. That's not what's happening here. There's just going to be less resources in it, meaning we're probably not going to see as many updates. We're probably not going to see as many new features. It's been very feature rich, right? I mean, it seems like every week, Suze, you and I have something new to talk about, like, oh, here's something new with Spaces, and here's something they're working on that some of us already have that'll be rolled out soon. I think we're going to see a lot less of that. I think that Spaces is strong enough to stand on its own with less resources. To me, is so much like Twitter chats. When I talk about the power of Twitter chats, I pretty much say, now I kind of change my wording and say Twitter chats and Twitter Spaces, because they're both so similar as ways to bring people together and connect inside of Twitter. And so I think I really feel like it's strong enough to stand on its own, as long as it doesn't get too buggy or stops working, as long as they maintain it. Don't you think if they maintain it, it should still hold well?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, that is such an important point. It's actually one of the things that I kind of replied to people when they were tweeting about it and I was involved in conversations was, look, this is one line in one article. I mean, it's Bloomberg, but it is just one line in one article. And yes, we've seen other things popping up about other platforms as well, which we're going to speak about in a minute. There certainly feels like there's a shift, but it's not going away. It's not like they're saying, right, we're closing this down, it's done. I think, as you say, Madalyn, at some point, certainly all of these features and the rollouts and things had to settle down. I think the whole experience of social audio was so heightened by the unprecedented time in which it emerged, that actually, things like this happening seemed to be a bigger impact on it in some ways. It in itself was inflated because of us all not being able to communicate in other ways. And I think things like this, therefore, feel like a massive shake. But as you say, at some point, things had to quieten down anyway. And I feel like it's way more stable than it used to be. I mean, I could drop out as host and come back in now without the whole thing falling apart, which is, a pretty major bug. So I think you're right in that as long as there's still some way of reporting those bugs and feeling like there's a line back into someone in Spaces, I think it's all right. I just hope they don't remove all of that two-way, because it has always felt very two-way.
And you made a good point before, too, talking about don't put all your eggs in one basket. Back in the MySpace days, nobody ever thought it would go away, right? MySpace was the social media platform of its time. And one day it went away. It was like, poof, gone. And nobody saw it coming, right? Nobody thought that would happen. These social platforms, while great as they are, they're free, which means we get what we pay for. They could go away tomorrow. Most of them won't. But, if you're putting all of your resources of your business into one platform, just know that things can change. And my concern with the whole Elon Musk, I was actually on an international online TV show last night called Ticker News. I'll have to go get the tweets and put it in the nest, but they want us to talk about the whole, Twitter and Elon. And my concern where we're at this point, because it's still not a done deal and so much is up in the air with them going back and forth, is that if he does pull out, and the last few days, it sounds like he's getting closer and closer to that. Are we in a place now where people are going to leave Twitter and not want to be a part of it anymore because they really wanted the changes that he was going to bring about? And the price has gone down with the stock. So it's really showing that there's not as much confidence in the company right now. So that's my biggest concern is, what direction is Twitter going to go, with him or without him? So if all you do is 100% Twitter only, and listen, I'm the person that's known for Twitter marketing. This is what I do. I help people with Twitter marketing. So it's hard for me to say it out loud, but if this is where all your resources are, don't be surprised if one day things change and everybody leaves and it goes elsewhere or it shuts down completely. I don't think that's what's going to happen here either way. At least I hope not. But I just feel like for now, Spaces is okay. It works great. And hopefully they don't abandon it completely. That would be a real shame.
Yeah, it definitely would. And as I say, this is maybe social audio shift time in June 2022, because the next thing we're going to talk about is a shake-up over at Clubhouse. So Ashley Carmen, another Bloomberg article came out. This was, again, late last Friday, about Clubhouse laying people off this week due to shifting strategy. And the tweet here says, presumably to get into growth mode. I mean, Madalyn, are you surprised that there's a shake-up over at Clubhouse as well at the moment?
Not really, because we keep hearing about such a decline over at Clubhouse. They're not getting, big download numbers anymore. It seems like a lot of people came over to Twitter Spaces. I've seen a lot of people. I know a lot of people use both. We know plenty of people are just 100% Clubhouse, but it seems like a lot of people have decided to pick one. And I know so many people that just chose Spaces. So it just seems like it's not what it once was. And I know that, when we think about when did Clubhouse start, it was in the middle of the lockdowns during the pandemic, and it came at such a great time. So, there's a lot of people that think, okay, time's up. I know you and I don't think that. We're very much believers in the power of audio, power of voice. I think social audio is here to stay, but there is this downward turn. I mean, not everybody's. Yeah, let me tell you what. Last summer, we're coming up on a year now, when things were changing in the world, a lot of these lockdowns were getting, undone. People were going back to work. I remember hosting different rooms and spaces and seeing a huge change from having hundreds of people live in a room to way less, because people were kind of getting back to their lives and kind of going back to their usual thing instead of spending time all day in Clubhouse or Spaces. I mean, do you remember that, like last summer when we started seeing a bit of a shift?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think, plenty of people are like, okay, to me, it was a fad. It was fun, but now I got to go back to the real world post-COVID and get back to the things I used to do when there's no time in the day for me to sit around in Clubhouse and Spaces all day because I have nothing to do. But there's plenty of us that saw the power of this and are like, okay, I got to keep at this, because what an incredible way to connect with new people. I mean, I have done case studies of people I met early on that were beta hosts of Spaces early last year that just grew their Twitter accounts phenomenally with more followers, getting more business, getting known for their knowledge just by hosting and showing up to other people's spaces. So there's a lot of power in social audio. I think some people fully embrace it, but I think for some people, just like NFTs, a lot of people are now saying, it's a fad. I think, some people look at social audio as a fad right now. And I think that's why we're seeing Clubhouse doing what they're doing.
It's the hype curve as well, though. Everyone gets a disillusionment moment and it's all supposed to be, that's it, it's done with. And then it will find its own plateau and find its own way. And I think, social audio isn't alone in being affected by the behavioural change of the pandemic and what's happened. I mean, even, in podcasting, we've seen podcast episodes go from, 20 minutes is the best thing because everyone can listen to 3 on their commute, to hour-long episodes because everybody's listening at home, to now people still trying to shrink back down their content again because people are out and about listening again and don't have time to sit there and have one on in the background while they're working from home. So, all of this behavioural shift, it's not just impacting social audio. Social audio is the content that was kind of born out of it. And I think some platforms might have had it on their roadmap for, in the future, we need to do something with audio. And I think some of them brought that forward, potentially without as much strategy as they might have had behind it, had it have been, carried out in the roadmap that they had planned. LinkedIn, for example, maybe that's why we're all sitting here waiting for that to pick up ahead of steam and not just be 100 beta testers. Who knows? But, I really feel like it created its own head of steam, if you like, and those that were watching the platforms that were doing well, watching Clubhouse, watching Twitter, kind of went, well, we were going to do this in a few years anyway, let's have a go. So now all these different platforms have got their different audio offerings, but all of them feel a bit shifty. And we've said before, none of them, they're all trying to find their place and their niche and what do they offer that's different, what's their USP. And I think the reason it's not all completely laid out is just because it was this moment that happened that created this content and this way of creating. So, it's super interesting. I'm sure there'll be like psychological and behavioural reports around 2020 for many, many years to come. And I'm more than certain that there will be some kind of digital content creation aspect to that in terms of researching it and looking at what happened and what we did. It will be extremely interesting. I mean, Matt Navarra tweeted out an article from protocol.com, which again was kind of another angle of Clubhouse losing talent and steam was its rather clickbaity title. But, it's another angle on it, another one to kind of have a look at and one that we've added into the nest for you to take a look at. So in terms of those that are leaving over in Clubhouse, we did speak about Anu last week. She was actually in her last Clubhouse town hall yesterday, co-hosting, I believe, and she spoke about her future, and she did say that she'll continue to be an advisor to the platform, which is good news. Nina Gregory, their head of news, is also leaving, and so is Arti Ramamurthy, head of international audio. So some really top people there that are stepping away from the app. Just kind of sorry to see them go. Excited to see what will happen next. I know Morgan has DM'd me with a few ideas, so perhaps when we open the mic, he can step up and give us his ideas of what might be happening over at Clubhouse. I'm certainly watching LinkedIn though to see what they're doing. At this very moment where we're all talking about Twitter Spaces shuffling things about and people leaving from Clubhouse, I do wonder if this is the moment for LinkedIn. Maybe something might happen there. I don't know.
Yeah, I have hopes. I mean, they're doing, some interesting things over there. We had Robert Hanna on, learning a lot through him. So it'd be interesting to keep a watch on and see how that progresses. I feel like LinkedIn, Twitter, we're going to see what happens with Reddit, but the ones that are already built into the platforms, I think are the ones that have the best chance. I mean, we have to remember Clubhouse is a standalone. It was the only one for a long time. So they were able to really build up the platform. But if that was to start today and people were like, well, wait a minute, I got to start brand new on a new platform, a new app with 0 followers, or I could just do the same exact thing, but on Twitter, we already have followers, already have a community, or LinkedIn, where I have a community, or Reddit. I think people weigh that stuff out, right? Don't you think that that's like part of them deciding where they should be?
Yeah, I do think so. And again, each of the platforms that have added it in, they do have their niche and their communities and their followers there. One of the reasons I really was hoping that Twitter would bring social audio over here is because Twitter's the platform that I've used to talk about voice and about audio in the past. So I knew that if there was a social audio element to it, I kind of hoped that the people that were following me would kind of follow me into that as well. And they have done, because this is where I've always spoken about those two topics, and this kind of naturally makes sense for me. Whereas Clubhouse didn't. I've got a few followers over there. I like to jump into other people's rooms if there's something particularly interesting, usually about podcasting or audio equipment that I want to listen to. But I'm not chomping at the bit to create over there because my community is over here.
Exactly. And now something really interesting to share. I know we've talked about this a little bit in previous episodes here, but we have a little bit more to discuss with this new chat type feature inside of Spaces. Twitter's calling it Entity. Now, I have to say, Suze, I think they win the award for the worst name of a feature. I mean, Entity, why don't they just call it Spaces Chat? Because that's what it is. That's Entity. I don't get it at all. But Rachel Thompson had tweeted this really great article from iMore recently that talks about this new live text chat. Now, you don't have it yet because if you did, on mobile, at the bottom right, instead of the blue circle with the plus sign, we would see a different icon. It's a comment icon, and I have it. So I've been able to do this in the rooms. I mean, you're the host and I'm the co-host of this room, but the other two rooms that I'm hosting, I'm able to do it. And I have to say, it is really super cool. I'm going to put the tweet in the nest from last Saturday, the Twitter profile tips with me, Dariana, and George. And it is so cool what it does. As soon as I don't have to do anything, it all starts automatically. So once I hit start for my scheduled room, this tweet goes out. It's the Twitter card for the room. Like it's, for me, I know with you, Suze, yours are, a much prettier color. Mine are these ugly brown. And I think we determined that's based on our profile picture or background. It's pulling some color out, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's the percentage of your background color or the percentage of your avatar color.
Yeah, and somehow it's pulling me for brown. But anyway, if it was live, you just say, listen, and now there's a replay. It says play recording. But what it does, it puts that out. And then if you're commenting using the little icon at the bottom right, it automatically comments to the original tweet. So it's basically taking a tweet with all the comments, but we can do it inside of the Spaces room. But I also like to pull up the tweet and be reading it in real time. I keep a tab up on my browser because there's a lot of interaction going on. I mean, we've got 29 tweets inside of this, 29 comments, and it's really cool. I'm really digging this feature a lot. Now, from our understanding is they're only testing this with a small group of Spaces hosts. I've only seen a few people have it, but I'm finding it to be really, really interesting. Have you seen one in action yet, Suze?
I haven't, and I'm wondering if perhaps you set up All Things Audio Space next week so that I can try it out.
I could. That's what I was thinking. Like maybe I could be the host, technically the host, you're the co-host, so that I can do it under my account. Then we'll be able, let's do that, because then we'll be able to play with it. I am liking it. I've had it for almost 2 weeks now. It is really cool, Suze. It is a really neat feature. And this kind of goes back to our earlier conversation with the changes, at Spaces with them pulling back resources. Like, to me, this is one of the best features they've added and really helpful. It helps with communication. What I love about this feature is that right now we're in a room full of listeners, right? We're live. Our listeners are here. Some of them are not going to want to request the mic, but they want to still be part of the conversation. This allows them to be part of the live conversation without having to hit the mic. Maybe they're too shy, or maybe we have too many people talking. Maybe there's not enough time to have people take the mic. It's just a great interactive way to be a part of the conversation, and it lives on because you can go back to it. And I mean, I've even thought ahead, after we did the room on Saturday with that, is later I take that tweet and I want to put that tweet back out. I want people to know, hey, here's part of the conversation we had, just from this one tweet, and you can read through and see it. So I just think this whole interactivity is super cool. And so I'm very pleased that Twitter put this out. especially now that they're going to be pulling back resources. So it came at a good time. We also have In the Nest, the one that Danny Singh did last month when he was when he talking about the feature in this particular room, Susan. This is from that when they were testing it.
Yeah, so this is from last month when he was like first showing off the entity feature, which should definitely. I mean, that's what happens when you leave the engineers to name it, I guess. I mean, I love you devs, I really do, but and I guess, I mean, I'm so happy that you're excited about it, Madalyn, because when I think about it, this is effectively the live chat thing, potentially, that I was really hesitant about a few months ago when we were talking about, do we need a live chat while we're in spaces? And I was like, no, it should all be audio based because it's audio. It was discussed in Danny Singh's space, like, is this rolling back to text and tweets from audio? Is this kind of a step back from it? But no, I think this is just the live chat feature, really, making great use of what Twitter is known for and is good at. And it sounds really good. And I'd love to experience it. So I think potentially you set up the All Things Audio space for next week, and we'll definitely have a play with it, I think. Yeah.
Definitely. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Now, also, Spaces put out a tweet yesterday showing this really cool screenshot of something they're working on, a way to react quicker when you're in a live conversation. You know how, like, if you look at the screenshot, it'll make sense. But, like, you're in a live room right now on mobile. If you minimize your screen and you're doing other things while it's minimized at the very bottom, now I'm on an iPhone. This experiment they're doing right now is just for Android. But at the bottom, I can mute myself, without having to go back and have the full screen of the room. I can see at the bottom how many people are here. I can mute or unmute, and I can X, meaning leave the room. And that's it. But in the screenshot, they're showing that they want to add another little item, which I think is brilliant, is the reactions. So, like, many times, because in this particular room, sometimes while Susan's talking, I'm hurrying up and going into my bookmarks and putting in the next tweet for the nest, because I have it all set up ahead of time to keep this flowing really nicely live. And there are times where while I'm going to get that next tweet, somebody says something, I want to hit the heart button or clap or whatever. I would love to be able to do that emoji, but I can't, because I can only do the emojis if I have the full screen of this room on mobile. I can't be minimized. So I love that they're testing this. And Suze, isn't it still kind of interesting that we're still hearing them test stuff? It makes you really wonder, how much are they pulling back resources? Because there's still major things they're putting out and testing.
Yeah, I mean, there were 2 iOS updates, I think, last week, and there was another one today, I think, that I updated before we started this space. So certainly the updates, is nothing slowing down as such right now, I would suggest, from experience. So it feels like there are still things certainly on the table that are being worked on and looked at. So despite people moving about, despite all the, what's happening and uncertainty, it certainly seems like they're definitely not just dropping it, are they? It's still working. They're still working on new things for us. And that might slow down over the coming weeks and months, but it doesn't seem to be slowing down right now because our Notion board is totally chock full of stuff.
Exactly. And as always, we uncover things through host Celine. He's always finding really interesting. It's almost like I think you call him like eagle eye, right? Because he always notices little details of things. And, he's always like just catching interesting things that we may not have noticed, or we always hear he gets access to things before a lot of us. And for this, he's talking about the possibility of an option of a Spaces recording after, I'm assuming this means after you've gone live, like you could change your mind with the recording. Is that what he's talking about here?
There's some good chat on this thread because I didn't think it was completely clear, and I'm not sure that I agreed with what was being said it was for. So it says people might be able to listen to this space after it's over. The host might save this recording. Your voice could be in a replay and heard by more people after this space ends. That was the copy that was on the overlay. And I think what it's suggesting is that potentially the host could go back and get the recording even if they hadn't hit record. So they could like toggle it over to get a recording of it, which, to be honest, I'm trying to think now, could you not do that as the host anyway if you were downloading your data?
Right. If you know how to, if you go download your data, or if you use a third-party tool where you can get instant access to an MP3, they could be thinking of that. Like maybe they're now realizing enough people are getting themselves a recorded copy of their room and doing something with it, turning into a podcast. But we don't know for sure what the meaning is behind this wording. But on the flip side, it could be they're going to start giving us the recording. And there's been, some hints that they're going to be offering more that could put some of these third-party tools out of business. They keep talking about they're going to give us more expanded stats. Well, that's what a lot of these third-party tools do right now, is they give us all of these incredible stats that we don't normally get directly from Twitter. And some of them also will give us an MP3 download after your room ends. Maybe Twitter is going to start giving us that automatically. So, it's interesting. It's hard to interpret exactly what does this wording mean.
Yeah, and I think it is very much like different people thinking different things. So, it may be that, it may be something different. Not too sure at the moment. Just a couple of other things to mention before we open up the mics for mic requests. So I actually noticed for the first time this weekend, I had basically a playlist of spaces that I'd bookmarked that I wanted to go back and listen to. And I realised that I didn't have double speed playback on my iPhone, which I hadn't noticed before. I mean, I've listened to replays on the iPhone before from spaces, but I just hadn't noticed that I didn't have that double speed function. And it would have been really useful to have that this weekend, because there were 2 or 3 that were, hours at a time of listening. And I do that with podcasts. And then when I tweeted out about it, Madalyn, you actually pointed out to me that you can do double speed on desktop, which I then checked out, and you can. Yeah, I can.
I'm able to on desktop. And I love the ability to listen to it faster, because I'm like you. I do that with podcasts too. I love listening at a much higher speed on podcasts, because I have so many podcasts I listen to every day. So it's the easiest way to get through them all.
And actually, Sajad replied to my tweet and said that on Android, he actually did a screenshot for me, and they do have double speed. So it's one of those discrepancy things, one of those variations which we love from Twitter, where some people have got some things and other people have got other things, depending on devices and versions and all the rest of it. But yeah, it was just in that moment, that was the thing I wanted to do, and I realised I couldn't do it. And it kind of surprised me that I hadn't noticed that before.
Well, and you would think at mobile, they would do it mobile over desktop. You would think more people are playing it back on mobile.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I usually do, because I like to do replays on mobile, because it's usually while I'm out walking my dog or driving or doing something, and I'm not going to bring my laptop with me and do that. So it would make more sense for them to do it on mobile. Very surprised it's not set for mobile.
Yeah. And then we had this great tweet from Danielle, who has taken a screenshot of her locked iPhone screen showing a Clubhouse replay player actually on the lock screen, which is pretty cool. I have to admit, I haven't noticed whether or not I'd had this previously, but it certainly looks the part. It's got your Clubhouse waving hand and app icon on there. And yeah, obviously making it way easier for people to listen on the move, which, as we've just said with Spaces, kind of obviously hasn't been completely nutted out just yet. But yeah, over on Clubhouse, you can listen to your replay and actually access it via the player on the lock screen, which is pretty cool. We also had a chat last week about replays lasting for more than 30 days. Again, after Hoseline spotted some copy changes in one of the overlays. And we've come across some more copy changes, well, Legion has, which suggests that this may well be the truth. This may well be happening. Still no definite yes or no, whether or not they will be available for more than 30 days, but just some kind of uncovering stuff. And just seeing it kind of mentioned more and more in different places, on different apps, different devices, sorry. So yeah, interesting that may well be coming soon, and we might have some unlimited replay time, which would be very cool.
Absolutely.
I think it's time to hear from people that are in the space. George, you have the mic. Hello.
Hey, George.
Thank you. Hi. About the future of social audio. It's been around for 52 years. I'm the first one to ever do it. And It's not going away. Now, whether Spaces is going away, that's a different story. I don't think it is, but here's a sobering thought and hopefully reassuring to all of you. Probably not to Indra, whose space just crashed this morning. But nevertheless, I want to say anyway that if it doesn't go away, but it's not improved, it just stays exactly where it is, it's more than good enough. I mean, in the old days, I was on conference calls on the analog telephones. So, and it worked perfectly. It worked fine. And it fell apart every once in a while in audio howling noises, but we got it back again. It worked. And now with a few little tweaks and touches that Madalyn's mentioned and Susan's mentioned, Audio Labs now for the first time today, I got my first space put on my YouTube channel with no work other than putting the URL in their space. Got approved for the to be a beta tester. It'll be soon to everybody else. They just put up pricing, I think today or yesterday. And Madalyn's been putting up her audio spaces for the last 3 weeks, I think, onto
Yeah, I've been testing
so it's on
it out.
YouTube. So they're not going away. So the thing we did one 3 weeks ago on Twitter audits, and it's up there, and it's not going away because YouTube's not going away. And it's so I feel pretty good now. Am I chomping at the bit in anticipation of some new features? Yes. Am I frustrated by some ridiculous features that they've never fixed, like the ability to see names and talker IDs? Yeah, of course that bothers me every single day. But it's more than good enough, and it's not going away. So I just want to reassure people. I see a lot of Twitter Spaces hosts here in the room right now. It's not going away. Even if it did go away, it wouldn't be a disaster. We'd all go over to someplace else. Our lives wouldn't change that much. But it's going to be fine, folks. Don't stop with the heart rending and the clothing rending and all that. It's going to be fine, folks.
Yeah, I agree. We'll just wait and see what happens with Elon Musk and the Twitter deal and if it's going to go through or not. And who knows, maybe things will change and the resources will shift again very quickly. So,
by the way, also, I can't get fast speed either but now that it's going to go, all my stuff's going to go over to YouTube. They've got speed control, really good speed control.
Oh, that's a good point. Do it over there.
Yeah. So listen to our stuff over on YouTube. It'll also help our stats tremendously on YouTube. And what is there? You guys are the experts in this. It's like a 2 billion people on YouTube, something like that.
A lot.
And 200 million here, 2 billion there.
This live room is recorded as a podcast as well. So if you like listening at a fast speed and you can wait 2 days, because after Suze does her editing magic for this room on Wednesday, is up on our podcast version on Fridays. And I love that ability to listen at a very high speed on there. But thanks, George, for sharing that with us. And next up was Smart Psalm Lab. Thanks for
Hello. Hey, Suze. Hey, Madalyn.
Hi.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me up to allow me to come up to speak. Always tune in. Love this show. So thank you. Yeah. In terms of, gosh, there's been so much. It's really funny because, Suze, when you posted a couple of these tweets earlier, was it in this week and last week? I was like, oh my God, there's nobody to talk to about this straight away. Where's the space? The stuff that happened with Elon Musk. I mean, it was quite quick how things developed because obviously we heard about last week and all the cutbacks, I guess I'll call it that. And then moving forward ahead to this week, and we're hearing about him threatening to drop the deal, which in the byline of that article, there was a lot of talk about the clause that Twitter had put into the whole deal, and that their attempt to resist kind of is advantageous to them, sort of forcing Elon Musk out, which I thought was quite interesting because I was like, why would you get into a deal if you were going to get into a backup clause in the first place? But maybe it's just it's a corporate business thing of not every company wants to be bought out by certain individuals. Not taking a dig at Elon because I'm sure he does his own thing well. But yeah, in terms of audio spaces, I think it's interesting because I've jumped in and out of Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces and LinkedIn and Wisdom, and it's quite interesting because I think Twitter somehow I guess because everything's all built in together, everybody is able to connect and grow as a community together a lot easier. And because of the discovery, I think it's been a very helpful feature, because obviously if a friend of a friend of a friend knows a friend, you're going to see the space that they're in if they're speaking or listening. And that's just something that all the other social audio platforms don't have. LinkedIn in particular, I was in an audio space in LinkedIn about a week ago, and it was a little bit fiddly. I guess it's in beta, but it didn't have discoverability like Twitter does. You literally have to know that person. There is a way to search for LinkedIn audio spaces if that's something that you're interested in. But yeah, great show. Just wanted to add my little tidbit. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And next up, we have Morgan, right? Morgan's next.
Hi, both. Yeah, so I just wanted to contextualize some of the Clubhouse stuff. So the story here is this is very much a restructuring, and looking at the pattern of hiring and what they've been building recently, I would say this started 1 to 2 months ago. And this also lines up fairly nicely with the macroeconomic environment. So we know that tech stocks have ended a 13-year bull run, basically, and we're entering what might be a recession. So this is an environment Twitter is also facing, which is some of the concern about your resources. So that's an external factor, but there are also very interesting internal factors. So to paint the picture at Clubhouse, they have been hiring a different set of people over the last 2 months with a focus on engineering and product and moving away from creator roles. So you can think of this as shifting from the creator strategy of 2021 to something that is much more based around communities. So Clubhouse are now describing themselves as a community of communities. And the vision here is that you will have, thousands or millions of smaller communities that are kind of self-organizing and self-governing that will live on the platform. We could probably go into that vision on a different show, because this will line up with something that they are thinking of releasing very soon. But just to say that in terms of staff churn here, this is the employee count is stable. So they've been hiring as many people as they've been letting go. And what you've seen is, so Nina is the news vertical, and Arthi is the international side. So this is cutting back on things that are now, given the new strategy, not considered to be core. So I assume that both of those people were given some notice, and probably Arthi was a couple of months ago. And this is an option to leave. So neither of these people are, as some press might paint it, people leaving a sinking ship, right? So this is a restructuring thing. Anu is a separate case as well. So Anu's been there for 2 years and was in fact working on her own startup when she joined Clubhouse 2 years ago. And she's very much a builder. So Anu is going to go and do something new, but is sticking around. And speaking with people around it, she's, I think, very optimistic about the future of Clubhouse. So that's I feel like I'm now rambling around, but the kind of picture is that this is a restructuring and not like something on fire, and it's been purposefully planned for about the last 2 months. And actually, the morale on the team is really quite high at the moment. They are very much in building mode and have been building something for about the last 6 weeks, which we'll see soon.
And it sounds like that thing that they're building then is very much around this idea of community, as you say. I'm quite interested in that, because as Madalyn was saying earlier, generally we're seeing that people are kind of going to social audio to create in a place where they feel like their community is, hence us being here on Twitter. So I'm quite intrigued to sort of find out what Clubhouse is thinking along the lines of building community when there's, literally based just on the social audio connections. That's really interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. So the other way of thinking of this is that it's not so much a creator creating things for a community. It's literally just the community part. So it isn't a kind of creator audience model and then the audience becomes your community. Exactly. That will still go on. But it's more along the lines of the kinds of communities you might see in Discord servers, let's say. So you're there to meet people with similar interests in specific communities, and you will probably end up joining Clubhouse for those communities. So it's no longer the case that you were to join and then, as Madalyn, you were saying, not have a following and have to build one. You're actually joining pre-existing communities that you want to be part of and getting to know people and doing things together. So that's the kind of model. I mean, we'll be able to say more about that when we actually see the final product. The other way to put this is what we've seen in social audio in 2021 is one version of social audio. And it looks to me like Clubhouse are trying to build quite a different one now. So what we've seen of social audio is the way they see it, not the final form of social audio. And we're going to see something that looks quite a bit different from what is being done over on Twitter, for example.
Oh, intriguing. I watch and listen with curiosity. Brian, I think you're next. Thank you for being so patient and waiting. Hi there. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you kindly, Susie. Thanks for the clarity there, Morgan. Brilliant stuff. Yeah, you really eat some nerves there, I think. I was coming in, actually. I'm kind of feeling similar to what my good friend George is saying. I think there's so much has happened with social audio. I don't think it's something that will go away anytime soon. However, what's the difference? What's coming up? I think that's where really everybody is at, wondering, is it going to be better than what we have experienced so far, or is it going to be some ridiculous, options coming along? That's there to be done. But communities, I think social audio, as we've experienced it over the last year or so, especially, I think so much networks and so much communities have happened to the point that I think it will be very hard to dismantle that. I think people will find each other in the next big thing, whatever that is. That's why all these platforms now, they are literally trying to see who comes up with the coolest thing that will literally capture everybody. Because whoever comes up with something that makes sense, easy to use, easy to maneuver and manage, they will gain absolutely phenomenal. So that's where they are going to have to bring their A game. We'll just be here waiting and watching. I'll just be following Madalyn for the tips of how to do that. Thanks, guys.
We all will. We're all here for that.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Hey there, Dr. M. Good to see you today.
Hey, Dr. M.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Great space as usual. I just came up to share something that surprised me this morning, and that was an article shared by a social audio guy that basically mentioned there has been an 80% reduction in new user registrations for Clubhouse year over year. So it's just a little bit higher than I imagined, because compared to the year before, it makes sense you would have a reduction because of the pandemic being less of a thing now. But I just wanted to say it's a lot larger than I expected, and it's not. I mean, to me, at some level, it's not good for social audio. I'm hoping. Yeah, I mean, don't know what to say about it. It surprised me.
I'm going to fling over to Morgan because I'm sure you've got something to say.
Yeah. So the brief thing on these kinds of articles is what they do is they pick the very largest point of Clubhouse's downloads. So let's say you were to look at a graph of downloads over the year. What you'll see is that there is a huge spike in two places. One is February 2021, and one I think is May 2021. February 2021 is when things went viral, and May is when they released the Android app and ended the invite system. So what you're doing is you're picking very unusual spikes. So the months before and after that are like 4 times lower. And then you can say, well, look, compared with this, the biggest spike they ever had, downloads are 80% less. But what you're doing is you're picking what is effectively an anomaly if you look at the big picture. So that is, if you're going to come up with the biggest percentage fall, that's what you would do. That doesn't mean that it would be nice to have that kind of growth. But I think that, those were unusual high points given the rest of the graph. That's the only point.
Thank you, Morgan. That's some critical thinking there. I appreciate it. It makes it more understandable.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Great perspective, Morgan. Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.